Hello, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how we can declare a variable to hold data and also how we can take values from input console, that's the keyboard. That's the other thing that we need frequently in our program. First of all, variables. Variables are named memory location where we can store some value. When we declare a variable, compiler writes the necessary instructions for the operating system to allocate some memory space in primary memory. So in order to declare a variable, we need to mention data type for the variable, the type of that data that the variable is going to hold. If we mention int, then it's actually indicating that we are desperate to store integer type values in the variable. So variable avar, as declared with the int keyword, indicates that it's going to hold integer values for the program. So when the program is compiled, compiler writes necessary instructions for the operating system to reserve 4 bytes of space with the name avar. And later on, when we use this avar, that particular space is assigned with the value. Say if I am writing avar equals to 5, then 5 is going to be assigned that particular space which is allocated in runtime with name avar. For real number, there are two options. One is float and another is double. We can declare a variable as float if we want to store real numbers. Say float x, that means x is going to store real number of, say, something like this, 3.56. It actually takes 4 bytes, and there is another option that's double, d. And the difference between the double and float is that double is of 8 bytes and float is of 4 bytes. So double can accommodate more range of values. If it is more space, we can accommodate more values. The range of values is high. So I have given a text file with this tutorial. You can download that and see and go through that, where you can find all the different data types available in C programming and the size of each of them with the range of values that they can possess. So you can declare a variable anywhere in your program, but the availability or the visibility of the variable is only after the declaration. So I have declared this variable d here at this line number 20. I cannot use d prior to this. This is illegal. So we can use a variable only after the declaration, and the declaration is mandatory. Now the next thing that you need to know is that the name for the variable should not contain a space, special characters like hash, single quote, double quote. These are restricted. You cannot have a variable with question mark, variable name with question mark in between. These are illegal. So variable, the rule for the variable names are important. You need to understand that. You cannot have a variable that is starting with a digit. That means I cannot declare a variable with a digit, something like this. This is illegal. Digit can be there in the name, but it should not be as the first letter. So that's how we declare variable, and we can use the variable for storing values. Now how we can input a value from keyboard. Say I want to input a value for this avar, which is going to be supplied during the runtime from the keyboard by the user of the program who is running this program. So for this purpose, there is a function scanf. That's again a library function. You can use this. Scanf requires two information as parameter that we need to supply to the scanf explicitly. First one is the type information, that what type of data that the scanf is supposed to input. The purpose of scanf is to take the value from the keyboard. Actually, the value is taken by the operating system during the execution period. It's always the operating system that's going to interact with the hardware of your system. It's not your scanf function that's going to take the value directly from the keyboard. It's the operating system to which the request will be transferred, and operating system will take the value from the keyboard and it will hand it over to scanf. Now, any operating system across the globe inputs and outputs values in terms of text characters. Even if you are typing in 5, it will be taken as text. It's not integer 5. A number needs to be represented as number when we perform arithmetical operations with that number in memory. Otherwise, if you are just printing the number or you are just getting the number, it can be text in text format. So scanf needs to know in which format you want it to have. That means if you are expecting an integer, then you must tell scanf that you need it in integer format. So scanf, on getting the value from operating system as text, will convert it to integer and will return it back to you. So in order to supply type information, there are format specifiers. They are actually something like this: %d, %c, %lf. So this starts with the %sign. So %d is the format specifier for integer type. That means if I supply %d here, scanf will understand that I want the value in integer format, in signed decimal integer format. That means it could be plus or minus, and it is a decimal value. That means it's base 10 number. So the scanf will do the needful to convert it to signed decimal integer. If I supply %u here, then I'm telling the scanf that it's the unsigned integer format that I want it. So there are various format specifiers, which are standard one, and they are there in the documentation. I have also given them with the text file with this lecture. You can just go through the format specifier for each of them. While going with the lectures, the tutorials, I will be telling side by side that this is the format specifier for this type, and you'll get to know eventually. So it's not necessary that you just memorize every format specifier right now. You can just go on writing the program, and you can just get the format specifier whenever needed. So you can Google also whenever you are finding the type and you don't know the format specifier. You can just go to Google and search the format specifier for that. And I've also given them in the text file associated with this lecture. You can get it from there as well. So %d is the format specifier that I want this value. And then the second information is that where you want this value. That means in which variable the scanf should assign this value. Now here what you need is this one. Instead of writing simply a_var, you need to write &a_var. That's necessary, because I have declared this a_var within the context of main. That means here within these curly braces. Now these curly braces defines the block for main, or the domain for main, or the scope for main, whatever you say. Now these instructions are belonging to main function. So the variable declared within the block of main is visible from within this block. We say that it's having local scope. That means outside of this function main, this variable a_var is not visible. Now imagine what we are doing here. We are calling the scanf function in order to take the input value. So the control will jump to that scanf function written in the library, and there the input is going to be taken, and then the scanf needs to assign that input value to a_var that is declared here. Scanf cannot view this or access this a_var variable which is declared here, because the scanf is a different function that is already written in the library that doesn't have any idea about your variable. So what you need to do here is to pass the address of the variable a_var. Address means simply the byte number where the variable a_var is declared during the execution period in memory. Now we can use this operator ampersand in order to get the byte number for this execution instance. Using this ampersand operator with any variable will give you the byte number of that variable where the variable is allocated in the primary memory. So we are passing that to the scanf function, and scanf gets the address of the variable, and scanf uses that address and assigns the value to that address. So on completion of the call to scanf, if I print this value, then obviously I'm going to get the value that is supplied from the keyboard. Let me go ahead and run this program so that we can see what is happening there in the console. So here we go. It's waiting here. I have not given any printf statement for a prompt. That would be much more convenient. Later on I'll be giving that. So I'm just writing 5 here and pressing enter. You can see that the value is 5. So it was waiting, the scanf was waiting for the input, and as soon as I entered the value, so it was taken by the scanf. It would be convenient if I give a printf statement here and tell the user what to do, enter an integer. So in this case, let me run again, it will be much better. You can see that this prompt is coming now and the cursor is waiting there, so I'm giving 10 and pressing enter. The scanf will take the value and it is displayed back with the printf at line number 18. So the next thing that you need to understand here is that I have also used this %d here while printing the value back to the console. Now had I not used that, then the printing would not be correct. Actually, if you need to print a value back to the console using the printf statement, then again you need to mention the format specifier. So what the printf does, it prints this string whatever you supply here within double quote, but as soon as it finds %d here, the printf understands that it needs to print a value of a variable at this point, and the variable is supplied again as the next parameter here. So the printf is going to print the content of this variable in this format specifier, so it's going to be printed here. So here in the printf, this format specifier acts as a placeholder for a value that's supplied here. You may have more than one variables. You may need to print more than one values there. Say I have another variable. You may go ahead and declare it in the next line, or you can declare it in the same line with a comma operator. Both are valid. So now if I just write something like this, a var plus 1, so x is 1 more than a var. It means if I provide 10 to a var, then x is 11, and I want both the values of x and a var to be printed. So and %d. So and will be printed, and then what I am doing here, I am supplying x. The first %d is the placeholder for a var, and the second %d is the placeholder for this x. So the parameter that comes next to the mandatory string in printf is supplied to is actually printed at the first format specifier that the printf finds, and the second one is, and the next one is printed to the next placeholder. So let me go ahead and execute this. That's the best way to understand the situation. Here I'm giving 12, and you can see that the value is 12 and 13. So 13 is 1 more than 12. So that's all. And this program practically doesn't have any purpose. Only I have showed you how to declare variable, how to take input from the console, and how to print values back to the console. So thank you very much.